Once upon a time, there was an old man who lived with his wife in a shack on the outskirts of the city. They had no children. "Time is passing. Who will care of us in our old age and bury us when we die? We don't even have a son or daughter to go out and help us beg for food." This was the wife's bitter complaint every day. "Oh, wife, God is merciful," the man said. "God will look after us, and don't worry, we won't die of hunger." The old man tried to make a living by selling firewood, but in the winter, he and his wife had to go from door to door, begging for a crust of bread, and thus they kept body and soul together. One day, as he swung his load of firewood over his shoulder, he saw a wild duck fly out from under the brush. "Let me see what's in there," he said. Under the brush, he found 3 eggs, picked them up, and started for home. When he got home, he showed the eggs to his wife. "Here is a gift from heaven," he said. 3 duck's eggs. I'm starving. Fry one and let's eat it together tonight." The wife fried the egg, and they ate it. The next day, he asked his wife to fry another egg for supper, and they ate the second egg also, and the wife saved the 3rd egg for hatching. The next day, when her husband came home from the woods and she wanted to hide the remaining egg, she found it already hatched and saw that a snake had come out of it. She was so frightened she ran screaming to her husband. "What happened, wife? What are you screaming for?" "A snake has come out of the egg I saved for hatching." "Nonsense. That egg was laid by a duck. How can a snake come out of a duck's egg?" "Take your stick and kill it quick." "Where is my stick?" The old woman was looking for her husband's stick when the snake crept into the room and the old couple turned deathly pale. The snake spoke in a human voice. "Looking for a stick or something to kill me, eh? There isn't a man in the world who can kill me. If you do what I tell you, no harm will come to you, and from now on, you can live in ease and comfort. But if you don't, I will have no choice but to kill you both. You prayed to God to give you a son. Well, I have been sent to be your son. Father, I want you to go to the king tomorrow in the morning and tell him your son wants to marry his youngest daughter." "Are you mad?" said the old man. "Who am I to talk to the king? We are beggars. Do you want the king to chop off my head? You are a snake. What do you want a wife for anyway?" "I am not a snake. I will tell you some day who I am. But don't breathe a word about my not being a snake. Not for the present. If you do, I'll disappear and you'll never see me again." What could the poor man do? He was glad the snake did not kill them, and thought a snake in the house might bring them luck. He got up the next morning, took up his walking stick, and went to the king's palace. The guards ordered him away. They laughed at him when he wanted to sit on the stone bench before the palace gate. One of the guards tossed him a copper coin and said, "Don't you know this stone bench is for royal suitors? The man who sits on this bench wants to propose to the king's daughter. If you have a complaint to make, go to a judge. You have come to the wrong place." "For heaven's sake, let me in. I've got to talk to the king," the old man pleaded with the guards. The king's chamberlain came out. "What's going on here?" "This old beggar wants to see the king," the guard said. "What do you want to see the king for?" the chamberlain asked the old man. "My son wants to marry the king's daughter." The chamberlain went into the palace and said to the king, "Congratulations, my king. Your daughter has a new suitor, and his father wants to see you about it." "Let him come in, and let's see who he is," said the king. "He is not the kind of man you would want for a son-in-law. He is nothing but a beggar." "So it has come to this," the king sighed. "Even a beggar thinks he can ask for my daughter's hand in marriage. Chamberlain." "Yes, my king." Hand him over to the executioner and throw his body outside the city. Let it be a lesson to others." The king's order was carried out. The snake knew what happened. "Nanny," he said to the old man's wife. "Yes, my child." "The king's men killed father this morning. They put him in a sack and will throw him outside the city. You will see the men carrying the sack pass by our door. Tell them you are his wife and ask them to give you the sack." The old woman sat weeping at her door. The men carrying the sack had a long way to go yet before they were outside the city, and were glad to get rid of it. She fell on the sack and cried to the snake, "They killed him because of you. You have ruined my life." "They just slashed father into 4 pieces, that's all," said the snake. "Don't worry, he isn't dead. Go make his bed." She went to make her husband's bed. When she came back, the old man was sound asleep and breathing loudly through his nose. She laughed and was so happy. They took the old man to his bed, and he was up the next morning, hale and hearty. The snake crawled up to him and said, "Father, I sent you to the king yesterday. What did he say?" The old man told him what had happened. "I felt the blow of the executioner's sword, and the next thing I knew, I was lying here in my own bed. I don't know how I got here. I told you I had no business going to the palace. The king doesn't sit down and talk with the likes of us. A poor man like me should know his place and keep to his own kind." "Go and ask him again," the snake said. "Don't be afraid. I want to know his answer one way or another." So the old man went back to the stone bench outside the palace. The chamberlain saw him sitting there and said to the king, "The old beggar is back." The king stamped his foot. "Then you didn't carry out my orders." 10 councillors who had witnessed the execution testified for the chamberlain, and the king spared his life. "This time, don't cut him into 4 pieces, the king commanded, but cut him into many pieces. Put those pieces in a sack and throw it outside the city, into the river." And that's what they did to the old man. The snake knew all about it and said, "Nanny, father is in bad shape today. They really cut him up this time. You will see 2 men carrying him in a sack." The old woman again sat by her door crying. She saw the 2 men carrying the sack. "Sons, that's my husband," she said. "Who can ward off the king's wrath? For the love of mercy, give that sack to me so that I can bury my husband properly." They tossed the sack into a yard and ran away, and the old woman wept bitterly over her husband's remains. The snake came out and said, "Nanny, don't cry. Close the gate and go make father's bed." She closed the gate, and while she was making her husband's bed, the snake bit into the sack and licked the old man back to life. The man sat up, all one piece again, and as sound as he was on the day he had been born. His wife threw her arms around her husband's neck and kissed him on the cheeks. The snake said, "Nanny, you can kiss him later. Take him to bed now. I want to talk to him." The old woman took her husband to his bed and tucked him in. The snake asked him, "Father, what's the news?" "Son, this time they wouldn't even speak to me." "But I've got to know the king's answer," the snake said. "Ask him again, and he had better say yes, or I'll turn his throne upside down." "Son," said the old woman, "do you want him to be chopped up again? They have killed him twice already." "Nanny, don't let that worry you. I am a Serpent Prince, and I can bring him back to life if they kill him 100 times. So the old beggar went back once again to the palace to seek an audience with the king. The king came out with his chamberlain and councillors and saw him sitting on the stone bench. "Who is that old man? What does he want?" the king asked. The chamberlain and the councillors were too frightened to speak. "I have asked you a question. Why don't you answer?" "May the king live long," said the chamberlain, who carried out the king's order. "He is the same old beggar we have killed twice." "This is very strange indeed. We shall find out what is at the bottom of this. There could be some magic in his revival. Let him come in." The king returned to his throne, and the old beggar was brought before him and bowed 7 times. "What do you want, old man?" the king asked. And we'll have to hear what the old man says to the king and the rest of this story tomorrow. For now, let's draw a picture of the Serpent Prince, the snake that was born out of an egg that they thought was a duck's egg. Remember, a snake's body curves all around. Let's make him any color you like. You get green snakes, brown snakes, black snakes, yellow snakes, many colors of snakes. But their bodies are bendy and they often curve round. I'll show you a picture of how I'm going to draw my snake.